Exceptional Radio. Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio. Good afternoon. It's the 6th of December, and I believe it's day 775 of 2020, and everything is hunky-dory. In the past week, we've had not one, not two, but 4 monolith sightings. And then our very own Chris Bates has learned that the monolith is now made available by your most famous artist. Isn't that right? Something like that. The most famous artist?
You two can have one for, I think, $40,000. Yeah. Because that's the Act 3 conclusion that 2020 needed. Man. All these people thought it was aliens. It's just capitalism.
Imagine the mailing list that person's going to end up on for buying that thing. God, what kind of weird shit are they going to get? I mean, we all see those weird Wish ads that are like targeted marketing based upon the things our phone hears us talking about. But I wonder what kind of ads they see.
Well, it's just crazy to me that like it was so obviously a marketing campaign that even Giorgio Tsoukalishis was like, what if this was just an elaborate marketing campaign? And that's where I'm like, dude, if Tsoukalishis is saying this is a marketing campaign, like, come on, y'all. And that's where I'm like, I'm so glad that they finally came out and acknowledged that they were the ones that did it, trying to sell more. Because I'm sure they're gonna make so much money in a week. Though they've probably sold 100,000 of those. Some stupid amount of monoliths have already been ordered because people were so enamored by the quote unquote slow news year that the monolith story became.
I mean, the monolith appeared in like 2016. Another one appeared in Texas. There was one in like Romania or something like that. There's one in California that got quickly destroyed by some fundamentalists. And then they erected some wooden cross.
Yeah.
It's just so absurd.
What isn't a marketing... What external expression isn't a marketing campaign?
Well, that's a complex statement when we're all told that we have to be brands in order to be successful. So this is where it becomes super complicated in that it is almost impossible in that we all have to be our own marketing team constantly in a society that is known for a closing window of fame in that you only have a certain amount of time to capitalize off of exposure. And in that most of the time when people have exposure, they don't even actually make any money off of it and just get exploited by those selling ads around them. So it's like, yeah, what isn't a marketing campaign? Because advertisers turn everything, no matter what you do, they start making money around whatever gets put out. And it becomes this super impermeable layer of monetization that makes it near impossible to put things out without having somebody monetize around it.
Well, that's my thing. When I think of a marketing campaign, it's not always about money. It's acquiring someone else's asset. So if I lift a lot of weights and wear a G-string and I have abs and a chest, I'm trying to get, a mate, and I'm trying to take the asset of their body, like the asset of their time. This is if I do this after if I put my hands in the air and I scream, yeah, after I win something, aren't I looking to gain access from other people's life to tell me I did something good? Like, what isn't marketing? What isn't advertising? I mean, we have eyes, we have sensors that take input from output. To me, all output is marketing. All output is trying to access someone else's asset to get to you.
I mean, I don't think that's incorrect in that. So this becomes another issue I've been thinking about lately. So the ego would seem to have emerged as a defense mechanism, and what we know as a conscience or ethical moral compass would not have necessarily emerged at the same time, but people like to think of them as synonymous. In that, what I'm saying is, when you have the ego, it's the self-check mechanism. Oh, did I cut myself? Oh, am I bleeding? Oh, do I need to um, see to make sure I don't bleed out to death? Oh, am I hungry? Do I need to make sure I eat? That is not a mechanism that actually is concerned with anything but the self. And in that ego construction, I'm really starting to think that the emergence of the ego probably preceded language by a significant amount, but in the ego, it was purely a defense mechanism to check for uh, life-threatening scenarios. So this is where, again, even the sense of when you're saying, "Oh, attracting a mate," well, the potential for my lineage to not exist is a threat to my life at the base level. So trying to attract a mate is effectively a biological defense mechanism for your bloodline. So there's all these things about, yeah, this shit goes back fucking millions of years in our genetics, where we're trying to act like, oh yeah, capitalism invented marketing. Well, not really, not at all. Like, you have fucking ostriches that do elaborate displays. There's all kinds of animals that do elaborate displays that don't. But then you get penguins trading stones for sex. So it's like there's all these things about animal kingdom that we are still learning, in which money as a means of tracking value has emerged in the recent 10,000 whatever years, and it confuses a lot of things. In that, yeah, marketing would capital would seem to be a lot of the motivation for marketing, but social capital is a thing that existed before physical capital. So there's a lot of the way we frame things is like, yeah, again, capital doesn't have to be money, because social capital is inherently more valuable than money in many cases, because then you realize, like, oh, the people we remember most, we remember how much social capital they had. We don't actually remember their bank account capital, like the actual, like, nobody knows how much money the person we assume existed, known as Jesus, had in his bank or in his wallet. People are more concerned with how many people he influenced and his social capital influence. Same can be said for Julius Caesar. How much money did he have in his bank account? Either of you know? Without Googling it? Nope.
I'm pretty sure that he had access to the coffers of Rome, but that wasn't his actual
But the
personal
number,
bank account.
the number is arbitrary, and that's
Yeah.
why
Exactly.
Well, I think at some point it would
Capital
have been like
number.
tens of thousands of tons of salt. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, but you don't know, because that's not what society actually cares about.
yeah,
Yeah. Power beats money every time. Power beats money every time.
Time. How much money did Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have in his bank account? Malcolm X. Fucking, I mean,
Nothing.
just go down the list, and all these people, even like Steve Jobs. Like, at the end of the day, nobody remembers like exactly how much money he had. He was more memorable because of his social capital, because of the technology that he distributed that made people's lives easier. And that's why we remember Steve Jobs, not because he had whatever. And it's like, again,
that
you couldn't-
guy, he had
you'd have
so
to-
much. He had such a seriously impressive organization that he was able to drive around his like badass top of the line Mercedes sports car without a license plate. No matter, and it didn't matter where he went, because anywhere he went between his house and the Apple headquarters, like, he owned that road. The anecdote I believe is that he got pulled over one day by some police officer who was just driving through, and the guy had to find out the hard way that he was on private property and he was pulling over the owner of the property essentially.
Yep, you can do shit like that when.
But that was
Yeah.
Apple. That was the power of Apple flexing itself there. I mean, he was flexing it through Apple, but
Mm-hmm. But that's still social capital.
yeah,
That's like that cop didn't. At the end of the day, it was like that's legal capital. It's you know, monetary. There's all kinds of capital in that exchange, but
yeah.
he didn't pay that officer to leave. He fucking flexed on him, saying, "Hey, do you know who I am?
You're in my country.
Do you know whose road you're on? You need to check yourself because my social capital outweighs your badge, motherfucker." That's what that exchange was about.
This land is my land. This land ain't your land.
You know that cop was there that day feeling embarrassed because he realized there was a whole new level of capital that you just can't buy. You can't buy that capital. Yeah, you can buy the land, but you have to be able to buy all the land to be in a situation where a cop pulls you over and you tell that cop where he can stick his badge legally and not have a fucking license plate on your car. Still be in the right because you paid for the fucking land just to make the road, just to make sure if they got pulled over, you could say, "Oh no, this isn't a public road. I actually paid for this road to get paved. So when you pulled me over,
You pulled me over in my driveway.
well, fuck yourself, and you legally do a goddamn thing about it." That's probably exactly. And he probably said way more shit than that. He probably made that officer fucking like do a bunch of shit that the officer was then embarrassed, like, "Oh yeah, guess what? You're on my property. You pulled a gun on me. Guess what? You threatened me. I could shoot you legally. I could bury you right now, motherfucker." He probably told that cop all kinds. He probably made that cop dig his own grave. Like, yeah, you're on my land. You have to dig your own grave because you pulled a gun on me. Guess what? You threatened me. We're gonna play this out, and then you're gonna leave, and you're gonna remember this, and your dick's not gonna work because every time you think about gonna have sex, you're gonna remember how much of a bitch I made you. That's exactly what Steve Jobs probably told that cop. Because Steve Jobs is a fucking immigrant at the end of the day.
Right.
And he knew that some point he was gonna be in a position to flex on a white man like a white man's been flexing on immigrants, and he did.
Yeah,
and that's why
he's
that
like
shit is
Syrian, right?
what's up?
Steve Jobs was Syrian.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't
I
wasn't
mean, not.
immigrant, like his family. Like, I mean, again,
Yeah.
when I say that, like, yeah, he passed. Steve Jobs passed for white, y'all. Come on now. Fucking Ralph Nader passed.
Ronda Rousey was the first African American UFC champion. However, they didn't promote her like that. Ronda Rousey's great grandfather, I believe, was like the first African Canadian physician, darker than me.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not promote Ronda Rousey as a black woman.
Well, because it's like she's not black. She's
One drop, baby.
we're not in the one drop anymore. People who pass never what's it called? They ran by the paper bag.
I know.
Which is, again, that's part of it, is like,
Yeah,
that's why passing is a thing. Because
Cameron Diaz.
let me present this. I was doing an install in someone's home, and I will say it like this. He came out to me as Jewish because in that his framing, he's a older gentleman, probably like 70. He's framing it like, you can't hide your blackness. I could hide my Jewishness. And in that, he was saying what all kinds of shit he experienced, and how his wife's family had to convert to Presbyterian, and like they were forced to convert. So there's an element of him like asserting like, hey, I know I passed. And he openly said it like that, in that because I've had other people, like I had a Mexican friend recently to talk about how he passes, and in that they acknowledge that there is an ethnic and this applies to LGBTQ as well. There are certain people who get to a point that when they pass, especially trans people, when trans people start passing for cis, shit gets weird for them because cis people start saying shit around them about trans people, not realizing they're trans because they're passing, and then it's like it's the same shit for a black like Ronda Rousey, who she one drop but she's passing. Um, fucking when Jewish people pass or Mexican people pass, white people say shit around them that they would not normally say if they had another visual indicator about the ethnicity about which they were about to say some racist shit.
Yep.
So this is also why when Rhonda, she couldn't get like listed as the first black champion because she passes. Like if she had claimed it and owned it and like threw it in the front before, it'd be different. But she had been passing for so long that you can't just do that in your like fourth decade of existence and not like be Rachel Dolezal.
That's like a reverse Rachel Dolezal.
Right. Yeah. It is I mean, but that's also why when you pass, you kind of like give up your right to identify with the plight. Like straight up. If you pass and society accepts you, you have no plight by definition. So that's kind of where again, it's like, yeah, she's got African American lineage or
African Canadian
lineage. So that's where even she's not even African American. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, she's an American with African descent.
Which
somewhere.
African American.
I'm all about that as long as Mexicans are also Americans.
Sonomy even weirder. Like that's why African American just gets weird. Like, yeah, she could even if she had like been wearing cornrows and big hoop earrings and like
don't even start me on that. That don't make nobody black. And I understand what you're saying. If she presented herself as, I get what you're saying.
Where I'm saying there is a period where in the 90s, if you're black and you wear tight fitting clothes and you tuck in your shirt, you're not identifying with black people because that's not what black people are doing. So there is this element of like acknowledging like what black people are doing generally as a culture, but not to say that every black person has to do that. So that's where
I'm with you.
It's like the black identity is not a uniform, but black people culturally go through styles. So that's like you can't disconnect those two things as if like even then, like if you walk around wearing cornrows and hoop earrings as a black person, you're gonna get clowned today for wearing like a 90s uniform. So there's an element of like, yeah, that's not black. Yeah. It's a period, but that period is heavily influenced by black and Latino people for sure. So it's not even like, well, it's not even a black thing.
My thing is I'm a little bit more existential than that. My thing is that if I'm black, anything I do is what black people do because I'm black, not because of what I do makes me black. So as a man, anything that I do, men do. So if I walk outside in a sundress and a sun hat and I identify as a man, then that is saying that men do this.
That's like unilaterally applying the position of an individual, which is a problematic perspective. Like when I do things, like I do it, I don't assume all men to do it. It's like I, as an individual man, do that. Like that's not.
Hold on. Are you ready for this one? Any men rape, flat out. That is a unilateral a point made by the men that rape. Not all men rape. So let's just say there's 3.5 billion men on the planet. Okay.
Can we just call it 4 and make it an easy number?
No. Because I'm taking off the 0.5. So let's say that only 0.5 billion men rape. However, the other 3 billion get categorized as that because all those other men raped.
That's
So if
to
so,
present a dualist construct in a
yeah,
unilateral construct that it doesn't fit.
it does fit in an existential way. Read up on your Jean-Paul Sartre.
I don't need to get a
I,
home lesson. What I'm when you
go ahead.
have a unilateral viewpoint, it is incompatible and inconsistent with a dualist perspective, in that the unilateral perspective is only then presenting half of it incorrectly, which is why when you present a unilateral statement without presenting the other side, it's
Mhm.
only half a statement. So that's
Oh,
why
cool.
it's still contextual. So that's where,
Yeah, yeah,
again,
yeah, yeah.
it's not a unilateral statement improperly framed does not accurately represent dualism, is what I'm getting at. Is
And I'm not trying to represent dualism. That's not what I'm going for.
you
I'm
but
not yeah, I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. What
right,
I'm saying is that if I can I can say that what I'm wearing is what men wear.
but
I
that
can say that because I am a man. Now, to
that
tell me that men don't wear this, I can say you're wrong because I'm a man and I'm wearing it.
that's what I'm saying. You're trying to bring a unilateral statement to represent dualism, as if dualism is the framework in which this society exists, and it doesn't. So then
No,
when you're saying men do this because you do it, that's correct in the dualist statement, but in a uh, singular society that does not recognize dualism, that statement has a completely different meaning than you're trying to represent until you put it in
correct.
context, which is also why it still needed the proper context to be accurate. So that's where you're not
I'm
wrong.
with you.
It just needed the proper context to be accurate and that's why, again, that's why it's important to um, discuss the difference between a dualist perspective and a unilateral perspective, that then becomes like, when you make a unilateral statement as an individual in a non-dualist society, it becomes problematic because that society does not yet recognize dualism. I
Oh
can
yeah.
state your
So if I, as Asian man, like to go out in my backyard at 3 in the morning and pee on a really specific bush when I let the dog out, does that mean that all Asian men do this, or does it mean that all
No,
men do this?
no, because of the word all. That's why I even said not all men rape. However, men rape.
Okay, so does that mean that men? Does that mean that Asian men pee on the bush when they let the dog out at 3 in the morning?
If you do
If I do,
and you identify as an Asian man, then yes, that does not say that they all do it. It says that men that Asian men do it the same way. This whole if you I wish they would take the word all out of the Constitution. They said all men are created equal. No, they're not. Right. So we have an example of how a statement can be used polydimensionally. Right. So we can say all men are created equal. However, they're not. We know this is fact. So I can say Asian men pee on their bush at 3 o'clock in the morning because you do. It's something that we have accepted as truth.
but the framing is not clear, and I think when you say all, or when you say Asian men, the clarification of some is the qualifier that makes that statement more clear than the one you're putting out, which is also why not making a clear enough statement is problematic, whether intentional or not. So when you say men, the lack of a qualifier in having some is intentionally vague to then seemingly trigger people to have a semantic argument when really it distracts from the point. And that's kind of my issue, is like, when people don't include the proper qualifiers in the
Word.
statement, and then it becomes a semantic debate. That's like a breakdown in communication that's often intentional, and you didn't clearly do it intentionally, but it becomes a problem because then it's like you have to then frame like, well, of course you're not talking about all men, and that's why
Yep.
it's a problematic to say men in the first place because you were talking about yourself. But when you said men, then people who don't do that, and they're like, wait a minute, I
I
don't
don't do that.
because you did not say some.
I mean,
And
Yep.
they impose all because the gap was there. And that intentional or unintentional vagueness becomes problematic in linguistic exchanges, going back and forth between dualist and unilateral perspectives or constructs. And that's what I'm getting at is, yeah, you're not wrong with the proper qualifiers, but when the proper qualifiers are there, there's a debate to be had on what you actually mean because we don't, as the audience, know, did you mean some or did you mean all? Clearly you meant some, but because we are not positive, we have to then confirm instead of then now we're like, what were we even trying to figure out what men do? But now it's like, was it about the dress? Was it about the pissing on the bush? But now we're discussing whether it's some or all because the qualifier was not there in the statement. And this distractor is like 90% of online discourse.
Right. And the thing is the same for me. The same could be said about the statement of, if you were wearing this at this period of time, then you could be seen as not. To me, that's the same thing.
Exactly. It's exactly the same thing as to why that construct needs to be deconstructed. It both of them, like
Yep.
when you say one without any qualifier, both of them either way are incorrect. And in that, the qualifier can then still be like there are rules and then there are exceptions, and most of the time there are exceptions, like not always. So that statement was carefully constructed.
Right.
And in that, most people are not careful in their constructions to then make it possible for the lack of clarity to allow for uh, multiple interpretations. Where if there was one or two more qualifiers added, there would not be that room for interpretation.
isn't that the magic of politics and the media in the last 4 years? Is that we've had a lot of statements made by people in high positions where they leave out really explicit and important details, and then we're left to, you know, fill in the blanks or something.
My thing is that it's not magic, it's cognitive dissonance. Because if you take the argument to the very end, the end of the argument is that all people are responsible for all other people's actions. Because you can take that some men rape, as into humans rape. And if one human rapes, then humans rape. So that would make everybody responsible for everybody else's actions. And that's my point, is that people get caught up in this idea of what Chris was bringing up. And the cognitive dissonance comes in because the end of the argument is that we are all responsible for everybody else's actions. And nobody wants to accept that, even though it's
Yep.
the truth.
Yep. And that's why I initially even started this with the framing of the ego as a defense mechanism. Like to me, the ego is not something that emerged.
Preach.
It
Preach.
seems like to me the ego emerged as a defense mechanism to make sure the individual is not hurt. And realistically, a society before language would have had to have way more connected empathy and less focus on ego, in that you're going to have to check with how if you don't have language to know how your group sees you, especially as a human, that we can't survive the first year without our parent or group or whatever, especially in the first 10 years where it's really difficult not to fall prey to a apex predator or someone within the group who is not trustworthy. That before language, trying to imagine somebody that's egotistical surviving and not getting shunned by the group. Like that shit ain't gonna work before language. So this is why, to me, logically there seems to be this element of where the ego emerges as a defense mechanism separate from society or um, like social constructs, in that the family unit is going to have to have been there pre-language, definitely, no question, obviously, just because of the way our biology works. But in that, the group or village dynamic would have probably been there way before language. So there's all these things about the way human evolution likely happened and the things that emerged to me then becoming as to why, like, yeah, we all have responsibility for each other, but we do have this ego that's telling us to protect ourselves because of external pressures. So there's
Yep.
like this duality that we have to navigate, that once you realize it's there, it becomes easier to navigate, but it's not easy. But it's the issue of many people operating in an ego that is 100% focused on self-preservation, but because they have language and because they have an iPhone, we're made to think as if those people are like evolved on the same level as us when they don't have empathy. Like, they have lost empathy because of it. I don't blame money on the loss of empathy. There are a bunch of societal uh benefits that we traded off for as a species. Clearly, empathy to make it easier to operate in larger groups. Like, empathy becomes more difficult to experience when your group is like Los Angeles or New York City, because those are groups. Those are metropolises, or I don't know what the plural.
Metropoli. I don't know.
Uh,
Metropole.
Sometimes it's Missy's, and sometimes it's I. I'm not positive
I
off
don't know.
my
Well,
head, so I'm not going to pretend I
there's
know.
Dunbar's number is the suggested
150.
cognitive limit of people that one can have
Yeah.
relationships with, and I think that has that I think that's important because
Well,
it kind of sets an upper limit on the availability to engage in empathy, because how can you empathize with someone that's just an idea?
and
Well,
incidentally,
well,
it aligns with the Amish community's numbers. They once they hit 150, they split off. It
Hmm.
seems it can be completely arbitrary, but aligns with Dunbar's number. I don't mean to cut you off, Winston. Go ahead.
oh no, you're cool. When you look at New York, Chicago, LA, when you look at the larger populated areas of the United States, they have a tendency to be more left. The left has a tendency to be more empathetic. When you look at the center of the United States, where there's a large dispersion, those places have a tendency to be more right. Right has a tendency to be less empathetic. So I would state that the more closely people are together, no
I don't know.
then there is more empathy. So I'm going to have more empathy for the people inside of my house than outside of my house. And the more people that are packed closer together have a tendency to be more left. They
On
have a tendency to be more empathetic.
on paper, because this is where, again, that's on paper.
Hmm.
You have people voting in San Francisco that they're left wing and they're democratic, but there's homeless people wandering the streets shitting everywhere because those Silicon Valley motherfuckers aren't actually paying for the social programs that they then tout on paper. So this is where, and at the same time, the people who are in the rural areas who are quote unquote right, I feel like would be much more inclined to give one of their neighbors who was like poor a meal, which is actually a socialist thing to do. So there's all these things about on
Hmm.
paper, there's contradictions. So it's like, okay, all those right-wing people, how many of them went to private school? Probably none of them. Public school is effectively a social construct. How many people in Silicon Valley went to private school? Probably a lot of them. So this is where, again, we're talking, not to say that only private school people can go to Silicon Valley. It's just a matter of, when you look at what they're doing, they're the ones creating the little micro communities where they're poaching the teachers and creating little backyard schools. So they're not trying to be part of the population. They're just saying that on paper. And then they're the ones like, okay, to me, Al Gore is a prime example. Yeah, he has done a shitload to raise awareness about climate change. You know how rich that motherfucker is? He's super fucking rich. So why didn't he give away his money to all the shit that he's claiming to be an advocate for? Well, a lot of people wear masks, and even down to charity is something that has been used as a front for hiding wealthy people's fortunes. And then the laws were written so that they only had to use like 15% at most, and sometimes only 5% of the coffers on the actual um, thing that they're supposed to be a charity for. So this is why people got upset at Lance Armstrong and the whole Live Strong shit, because all the fucking cancer research money was going to fucking rich people. And it's like all these 5Ks, all these donations, all this charity, what actually got solved? Fucking shit all, because all of it was actually going to rich people. And this entire front of left wing technology is social change. It's all a front for people to pretend they're doing shit and collect money. So that's why I'm saying, like, yeah, they vote left in these cities, but what about their poor people? Did they solve? Nope, they didn't solve the poor problem. So is it really left, or is it just left on paper? And that's
Well, the I'm going to say this goes back to the beginning of the conversation, that power is seen as more valuable than money. So
right.
one could say that, yeah, he has a lot of money and he used his power to, and he, she, whoever we're talking about, doesn't matter. He, she used their power instead of their money to affect change. So Lance Armstrong, he might not have, the organization, whatever it was, may not have taken the money and put it where it was. However, the power brought the concept to hundreds of millions of more people.
But it
And
didn't.
so similarly with the Gores, they didn't use their money, they used their power to raise awareness. So I would assert that.
But it was fake awareness, and that's why it's all problematic. In that, yeah, he raised awareness, but it was all awareness that didn't actually affect change. The same shit with Lance Armstrong. They raised awareness, but this awareness is the same shit. Like when people are like, "Oh, this will get you exposure." Exposure don't pay my fucking rent. Awareness don't fucking cure cancer. It doesn't.
Experience doesn't pay
Research and
rent.
university is what's curing this shit, and that's not getting funded because people are putting all their money towards these fucking bullshit charities, and it's not actually going to the research people. Like, it's the awareness. It's the same shit as the exposure that y'all giving these fucking DJs to not pay their rent. It's the same.
Pay your DJ. Pay your DJ money. I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you. Pay your DJs.
No, it helps. It helps when people need to learn. Exposure does not pay my bills.
Man, I had a delicious medium rare exposure burger the other day. It was
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, and that's the thing of it, taking it back to the beginning of the conversation. You got power, you got money. They both can affect change very well. You also have this preservation of self. So I'm not going to use all of my assets because I still need to protect myself. So I'm going to use the asset that least affects me to give to somebody else. I'm not going to give you my grade A milk. I'll give you my grade B milk. Hey, I gave you milk. Shut up. Now, you think about a truly empathetic person. They're going to give their power and their money. They're going to be a Buffett. Hey, when Buffett dies, isn't he just going to give his money to something like that? I get that. Now, other people, they go, well, I've got this bloodline that's going to go on forever. I made 100 billion. If I keep this 100 billion, my whole bloodline for the next 20 generations, they never got to work again. Preservation of self.
I'm not sure if you're aware of this. He's not even giving his son money. He only owns one house. It's the same house he owned in, I think, the 60s. So there's all these, like, yeah, he has a private jet. But Richard Branson owns a fucking island. Warren Buffett owns one goddamn house, and he's not leaving money to his kid actively. And the only reason I know that is because his son wrote an article about it like years ago, and I read the article, and I was like, I didn't know what to expect going into it, and it was like, holy shit, was that mind blowing knowing that this dude is praising his father for not leaving him money because it forced him to own, like, carve his own niche, and he became a composer. And he's
Hmm.
like, if I had just gotten money, like, I never would have become a composer in my own right. And it was one of these things where it wasn't about the money because his dad had money, so he was like trying to become a prolific composer as a goal for his life. He wasn't trying to become a billionaire because his dad already did that. And there's this whole element of, I was raised around multiple billionaires, like in my private school, so I was exposed to like ridiculous extravagance when I was young. And then it like made me jaded on the notion of what that shit even meant. Cause I'm like seeing 16-year-olds drive Porsches, and then fucking basketball players coming in from Serbia giving they gave this dude like a fucking Lamborghini to drive around because they wanted him to play on our school's team. Like, this is real. Like, I'm not making this shit up. Like,
I
this
know you're not. I know you're not. I went to a school to where um, one of my friends, their father had bought them a type of car. It could have been like a Lexus, like a Audi, a Lexus, or something. The child was like, "No, I didn't want this. I wanted a Porsche." They took the car back that day and got that child a Porsche.
yeah.
So I get you.
And I guess what I'm getting at is like when you see that in your periphery, and then there's MTV Cribs happening at the same time, and then you see that, like, oh, all these people on MTV Cribs are like fake. Those are constructed personalities where the
Yep.
people who behind the scenes are like actually giving their kids Porsches and actually like taking that Porsche back because the kid wanted a Mercedes or a Range Rover or whatever. Like, it's a whole different level than what they were even presenting. And then you understand that there is a feudalist society that they're hiding. And that's kind of where I'm like,
Yep.
it becomes difficult to operate in a feudal society when like hundreds of millions of people aren't even aware of the feudalism, and then are then pitted against each other. So then that's where I'm like, obviously we have to um get to a point where we're not like, oh, when you say, like, I'm not arguing with you about the semantics of your language structure because I'm trying to uh, ridicule you or anything like that. It's more so when we get to a point where our society has actively made it more difficult for us to communicate, then it becomes pertinent for us to demonstrate to others a lesson in better demonstrating communication, because then they're going to see their mistakes and how they're like not communicating with people when they could be better at it. And it's like only through demonstrating better communication are actually people going to learn how to communicate with each other better, because part of it is listening. Everybody's got to work to be a better listener, active or passive. um but then that's where it's like conversations are organic, and sometimes they don't work best in back and forth. Sometimes they have to like overlap, and this is something where we have to learn, like, if you okay if you get to a point and I'm trying to interject, it's not because I'm trying to be rude, it's because there is a fork in the conversation. If we go down that path, it's going to present an entirely new or reinforce the thing that you were just about to say, in that when people hear it that way, um it's different. And it's something that I think as to why they're drawn to like podcasts, where there's something interesting about contentious exchanges, um whether it's the intonation of voices that gets people's attention, the ideas, or what. But if I see a point of possible contention in a podcast, I jump on it rather than let it pass, in that that's what people come here for. Um, in a passive conversation with a friend, that's rude as fuck. You know what I mean? Like that shit is rude as fuck. Um,
I don't. As I interrupt you, I don't know. Um,
I'm some
me and Tien over here, we have had conversations that people have looked at, and they were like, "Oh my God, were you guys about to fight?" No, we're not fighting. We are discussing a topic. That's what we're doing. We say things to each other like, I go, hey, you need to go check up on your John Paul Sartre. You go, hey man, I didn't come here for a homework lesson, right? Other people could say, oh my God, they're getting to a fight. No, motherfucker, we're talking.
right.
That's what we're doing.
And often I have to remind people or warn people that I'm more blunt and more direct than other people will be. And this is like yesterday. I was talking to a friend. All of us know. It's like they were over, and I was in a point. They were saying you should watch this, and I was like, should I be honest with them? And I'm like, of course I should be honest, and that's why they're friends. I'm like, I'm not gonna watch that for X, Y, and Z reason. And it's like, it's not me being like, oh, I don't think your advice is great. It's like, actually, I'm already familiar with Sartre. It's not like I'm not familiar. And so in that, it makes it easier because we are friends, and I know I don't have to like go this roundabout, beat around the bush, like, oh, I need to worry about if he's gonna take this person. Like, no, dude, I don't need a history lesson right now. Like that, I can just like that because I know you're not gonna take that shit personally. And it's easier for me to say it that way. When I say it that way, you're like, oh, he probably knows this. Who am I talking to? I'm
I
not.
I knew you knew it when I said it. I
No.
knew you knew it when I said it.
And also, anybody who hasn't watched The Good Place, that's a great
Oh, I
place
love it.
I can go to get an introduction and examples for philosophical frameworks. It goes through like all the best and some of the more um, niche philosophers. But again, this is where it's like back to the point in that there are ways to show people Socratic method, or you can discuss Socratic method as an existential concept. And one is going to appeal to one type of learning style, and another's like there are multiple learning styles that need to be addressed, even down to there's going to be deaf people that can't hear this that need this shit to be fucking closed captioned correctly to properly get the point. And there's going to be blind people that only would he be able to access this shit in this format unless we fucking translated it into braille or so there's all these things about, again, we are almost ableist in our presentation, but we think about these things, so then that's why we put it on YouTube, because it automatically closed captions, because we're trying to think about the audience more than just what we're saying. And in that, the discussion becomes more organic as to why um, when we're discussing ideas, I'm not saying I'm the source of truth on them either. It's more so like, hey, let's explore this concept, and this is what I've seen from my perspective. Then Winston brings his perspective, and in many cases, we confirm each other's perspective from a different perspective, which makes the uh, base truth somewhat more valid from our perspectives. Maybe not inherently in the universe, but this is why when we're like constructing uh like existentially, I think everybody has like gone through a nihilist phase at least in 2020 by force. In that when we have been forced to self isolate, it's almost like you get the uh pantheon of philosophical explorations by proxy of being alone or being isolated. And nihilism is obviously one that you just drift into, but one I've found solace in for many reasons, in that you don't have to be a negative nihilist. What people just assume that it's more so when you can like find a philosophical framework that makes it easier to be your base framework, then it's easier to then explore other frameworks and go back to that one as like, oh, well, none of this actually matters. None of it
Got
matters.
it.
You know, and that's where again it's like the nihilist framework is really easy to get lost in, which is also why you have the Nietzsche's like warning not to stare into the abyss because the abyss will stare back. You don't want to fucking that shit. You get paralysis, and when the abyss is staring at you, you might get stuck there. So you don't want to be in the nihilist mindset in a negative place for more than like a microsecond because that shit will paralyze you like an event horizon and will suck you in. And eventually you're like, why am I even here? But that's why you don't revel in nihilism.
Well,
Don't.
my thing is you have poly industries that came out of that with the concept of vaudeville. You know, you have hip hop, you have Hollywood, you have rock and roll, which is hip hop, which is R&B, which is the blues, which is vaudeville. You can make up whatever the fuck you want because it all doesn't matter. This is going. This is going to one of my heroines, uh, um, Paris Hilton. Her grandfather gave none of the. Get your hand off your face, Tien. You get. She is one of the most wonderful, smartest people on the effing planet. Her grandparents didn't give any of the grandchildren any money, and she knew it. And so, guess what she did? She built the persona of the stupid blonde, and she sold that shit, and she's selling it again. This is what she did. She goes, you know what? None of this shit matters. I'm not getting any money from my grandparents. And so now what do I get to do to make my own? Because I'm not getting any. And she said, what assets do I have? Well, I have the stupidity of the public. I'm a skinny, blonde, white woman that has access to things. How can I use that to afford myself financial capital? And she ran with it. You have your Ice Cubes, your Ice Teas, your Van Halens, your Led Zeppelins. None of those people are real. It's all in, they're literally acts. Tom Cruise, that's not his real name. And they just put it off as, you know what, it's real. And they tell people it's real because they understand none of this shit matters. None of it matters. So I can build any reality that I want and make y'all sheep you'll give me your money. I'll be quiet.
Well, and that's true.
Bro, his last name is Mapother the fourth. Thomas
Like,
Cruise Mapother the fourth.
here's the thing. All of that stuff is true. But further, the only thing that actually matters is between people in the entire universe. The only thing that we can prove matters is the relationships and validations that we have on this planet. So therefore, those are the only ones we should actually be concerned with. Like if there's a higher being, I shouldn't actually be concerned with that because I can only validate my friendship with Winston, my family bonds with my parents and my sister, my cousins. Those are the only ones I can actually validate. Therefore, it's not to say that I shouldn't ponder how I'm perceived by a higher power if one such exists. It's more so that motherfucker don't care what I do apparently because he ain't validating or invalidating my shit day to day or she. So why don't I focus on the things that actually matter, which is those things that ultimately we do them biologically so we can persist. But when we're saying like, yeah, if a person can not exploit the monetary angle and actually do some shit that is not in line with just the ego, then they are what we would consider altruistic. And there is a semblance of, is it possible to be capitalist and altruistic at the same time? That's a philosophical debate. Um, is it possible for people to go back and forth? Obviously, that's easier. But is it possible for someone who has been capitalist to undo their capitalist effect through altruism? That's another debate. And that's where there's all these things about, like, well, Warren Buffett, yeah, he's going to leave all his money to
Wait, they're gonna
what about
fix their colonialism with the money that they gained from colonialism?
They
right?
could. No, hold on.
That's just
They
that's
could.
neocolonialism.
What if these people go and they have an event change and they go, you know what? I done fucked up.
Yeah.
I done fucked up. I done made $100 billion. I have somehow, some way killed off 1 million people. Somehow, some way, through the work, through all this stuff. Now I'm going to take my money. I'm going to buy a state and I'm going to make all the houses free. I'm going to make all the food free. And I'm going to come out and say, I fucked up.
I mean, it does, I
Yeah.
think it's like an altruistic, like, act, but again, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's possible to I'm not asking this question because I think I can answer it or that anybody can necessarily answer, but I think it's a great philosophical debate to ask, in that, like, okay, you colonized California. How many homes do you have to build to give away for free to offset that colonization? Like, is there
All of them. All of them. All of them.
But again, it's like, well, then does it have to go beyond that? Is the negative impact so negative that it can't be offset? Like, is because this is where the good place actually frame that in like our current existence makes it damn near like, if there was an actual litmus to get into heaven, our current just existence would make it near impossible for somebody who's actually a good person to do it just by proxy of the manufacturer consent that we all have to go through to get everything. Like, you can't exist in this society without being complicit in some form of slavery. It's just impossible because by design. So in that's where the good place again examines this notion of, when you have manufacturer consent to be implicitly involved in slavery at some turn,
Mm-hmm.
how does that person effectively ever get into heaven? Like, we have
Right.
no, like, we wouldn't have been able to get into heaven for like the last 200 years.
I'm going to say that Winston's 32 containers of Folgers coffee pretty much ensures that he's not getting into heaven.
Ever.
I mean, the t-shirt he's wearing was probably, I mean, not to say again, it's like everything in my immediate vicinity that has electronics in it had some slave labor in it. No,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
it's an unfortunate side effect. It's none of our choices. Everybody that uses that shit is involved implicitly, and none of us have a choice unless you're like, oh, I'm just gonna use smoke signals and fucking train fucking doves, and they're gonna take my letters and I'm gonna wrap it like on soft, very soft paper tissue, like the tissue paper that I made myself from a
From
tree
grass.
seed, because it was sustainable, and I actually did not harm anything in this fucking process, not even the dove's leg, because I made sure that tissue was something that I made organically with care. Like, that person is the only one who could ever have a chance of not doing anything that harms someone because of manufactured consent into slavery in this society. And that is, it's like, what? Okay, I had an existential realization when I was like walking in Istanbul one time. So what happens when you live in a big city is you are subject to poverty every fucking day. Every fucking day. You cannot get away from it if you leave your house. You're going to see poverty every fucking day. And eventually what that does is that desensitizes you to poverty. So what happens is you have poor kids running up to you and you're like, I gotta go to the grocery store. And you have like kids running up fucking hands out. And like one day that shit like broke me. Because I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't fucking do anything.
Not a
And
damn
he
thing.
has to realize that as a fucking adult that you can't do shit. You can't do shit about it. Maybe on a micro level, oh, you can give that kid the fucking change. But the next day, that hand keeps coming out. Eventually your bank account's gonna run out. And you know that, so you have to protect yourself. And then
So
the ego comes back out and protects you from fucking draining your own bank account because there's too many fucking poor kids around you. So then guess what? What do? You put the blinders on and you stop seeing the fucking poor kids. That's what a big city does. So I don't give a fuck what New York City votes. I don't give a fuck what the left California votes. They got one poor kid. That's too fucking many. That's too fucking many for you to consider yourself altruist left. No, you're not left. You're left on paper. There is no left in America because we have poor children. I'm sorry. You cannot have poor children and have all this capital and have any sort of fucking left. I'm
There,
sorry.
there is no good reason for you to be sorry. You did nothing wrong.
you,
Don't you dare say that you're sorry. There's nothing sorry about you.
not
You
only does
you
this
pointed out
country
a
have
wonderful fact.
not only does this country have poor children, it has children locked in cages still.
Yeah,
Getting raped.
that's just
Getting raped.
that's like not even. That's just the stuff we know.
Yeah.
Which again, and this is kind of where it's like, okay, man, I'm a scientist. All of the data says, as a black person, I should not trust anything coming from a fucking needle in this country. If I get a
That's
vaccine, that shit better fucking be from Canada or fucking Germany or fucking France or fucking India. I am not taking no fucking vaccine with USA anywhere on that shit because I know about the Tuskegee experiments and I'm not a fucking moron. So here's the thing. I will take a vaccine, but that shit is coming from Canada or Mexico. I'll take a fucking Mexican vaccine before I take an American one. Like straight up. Y'all want to talk about, oh, Mexican drugs are second rate? Nah, I'm taking a fucking Mexican vaccine before Pfizer. Fuck Pfizer. Do you mean the motherfuckers have been benefiting off of our mental health and mental anguish and trauma for the last 30 fucking whatever years? They're the ones nah, hell no. Nah. They got a subsidy to then take money from my insurance. I don't have insurance. Somebody's insurance company to pay overinflated for price for some shit they got money from the government to research.
You know,
Hell no.
it is really impressive how quickly the whole messenger RNA vaccine delivery method was developed. It's like next generation technology in a sense that kind of just, you know, materialized in what 10 months.
Yeah.
And we've been
Don't trust
fighting
me.
the common
Hell no.
cold. We've been fighting coronaviruses for the last 100 years since the common cold emerged, at least within the time frame of being identified. And there's no vaccine for that. But I mean, I get it. This one is deadly, but
Like, I didn't do Thanksgiving with my parents because they're in Indianapolis, which is a real hot zone. I'm not fucking around with COVID. I have not been sick all year. I have not left a 10-mile radius for a job. I am not fucking around for money. I am not fucking around for a meal. I'm not fucking around for family. I am not fucking around, period. I ain't taking no fucking vaccine from these motherfuckers that tested fucking syphilis on black people and left black people to die and let our fucking bones rot and shit, as if they're not gonna do that shit again. When they were trying to rush the fucking vaccine to test it in Africa, when Africa had their shit under control, that was sketch to me in the first place.
Yep.
I'm not taking a vaccine from a white supremacist infrastructure. Fucking period. Fucking end period. That's not happening. As a black man, fuck no. You can kiss my fucking black ass.
the
Happily,
the
you can happily kiss my fucking black ass.
so there's a link on the that was provided by the New York Times that has a kind of interactive guesstimator on how far back in the queue one might be based on, you know, a short list of factors. And so it turns out I'm behind over 120,000 people in Monroe County, but I'm behind 5.8 million people in Indiana, and then I'm behind 280 something million people nationwide. And this is the guesstimate. And then they have this illustration. If the population was represented by 100 people, I was like 13th from the end of the line, 11th from the end of the line. It was pretty much the end of the line. So I actually found that kind of comforting because what it means to me is there is going to be a period of time while this rolls out, while where I get to see if they can reach their efficacy claims, or where we can see which side effects actually start to emerge in a large population versus the sample sizes that they were operating with.
I'm completely with you. I treat this the same way I treat electronics. I don't buy the first version of anything. I wait a few years,
Exactly.
flat out.
Early adopters be damned,
Dude,
man. They can take all the fucking bugs.
man,
There's
what?
gonna
Take it, please. Take it.
So
I will not have to.
so the other day, Chris pulled some antics on eBay, and I think you should tell everyone about this because it had me cracking up. Like I was dying in my seat reading about this.
So this is 100% real story. Everything I'm about to say really happened in real life. You can go check the eBay like fucking account. Like anybody hearing this, I'm not making this up. So just to give some context, scalpers have been a problem in many industries for a while. And what ended up happening is scalpers got more technologically advanced and started using bots to scalp things. So whether it was the new Yeezys or um, you know, the fucking Paris Hilton special edition sex tape, whatever it was that anybody thought it was going to be popular, they would use bots to buy up all of the fucking supply and then go to eBay and immediately. So, like, some shit, you'll find, like, okay, this last week, or I guess, yeah, is technically last week now. The NVIDIA 3060 Ti was released at 6 a.m. Pacific time on online only platforms. So because it was online only, this basically put the bots in a position where they're going to have all the shit immediately. So when I say they had all the shit immediately, like the listings were popping up on eBay by I think like 6:05 a.m. Pacific time. Like, and what ends up happening is the anytime something is released, whether it's PS5s or Xboxes, the supply is gone within like 5 minutes. Like if 5 minutes is like actually a long time, and the shit's always on eBay. So then people like myself who actually just want to buy some shit are understandably pissed, and we're like, okay, what the fuck do we do? Because eBay's not doing anything about it. Nvidia's not doing anything about it. Best Buy's not doing anything about it. So it's kind of like on us to start fighting back. So I'm like, fuck these scalpers. What can I do? And I'm like thinking about it, and I start seeing listings for Nvidia images pop up, and I'm like, people are selling images. What fuck is this shit? And I start to think about it. I'm like, oh, they're trying to catch the bots that are going on eBay and finding lower listings and trying to upsell them just to exploit the middle market. So I'm like, I wonder if I can like make some money off of this. So, because I'm like, if it's a bot, I don't give a fuck. Like, if I have somebody's, if I can like get like $500 from a scalper over some shit that they're fucking up, I would be like, oh, this is amazing. So I make a listing, go to bed, whatever. Wake up, I have $450 in my eBay account or my PayPal account. That shit sold because I made a buy it now price and 24 hour a 24-hour auction. So I'm like, oh, maybe the bots will start bidding on it or whatever. I wake up, have fucking $450 in my PayPal. Like that shit went by the time I woke up. Like who knows? Like I could look at it, but that's when I was like, wait, is this real? Like did this just happen? Did somebody really just fucking accidentally buy a picture of a fucking 3060 Ti because they had a bot on there? So I'm like, whoa, I'm gonna like do this and get a bunch of people. And then I like look in my messages, like, thanks, man. Thanks for not marking up the price. And like when all these scalpers are fucking over the market and this is great. Somebody put that price out. I'm like, you fucking idiot. Like I put it in the description. I literally put in the description, humans do not buy this. This is for bots only. This is meant to catch bots and fuck over. Like I didn't say fuck over, but to catch scalpers and their bots. Humans do not buy this. First motherfucker, who in there? What kind of idiot would leave a 3060 Ti laying around for $399? This motherfucker buys it. So I'm like, I can't keep this dude's money. I'm not that person. So I send the money back, relist it, trying to catch a bot. Less than an hour later, fucking money in the account. I'm like, whoa, these bots are fucking idiots, man. Damn these bots. And I'm like, I'm about to make a bunch of rent. I'm like about to make my rent off of these scalpers. Fuck these dudes over. Look at my messages. Thank you so much for not marking up the prices. And I'm like, God damn it, humans. Just read the fucking description. Why are you so hasty? Why do you have $400 and you're so fucking hasty with your money? And I'm like,
why do you have $400? They're so hasty.
Getting upset with humanity at this point for falling into a bot trap. I laid a trap for bots, and the first two things I catch are humans so fast. And I'm like, how is this possible? I had to send back $1,000 to people who accidentally bought a picture. So that's why I'm like, I'm not gonna do this anymore because I'm getting tired of sending back money to humans. So like, I just kept watching it, and now people are actually selling poems about the 3060 Ti to bots, and they're selling. The bots are bidding, man. The bots are buying images. But unfortunately, humans are buying them too. And then there's people who are actually bad people who are not giving people their money back. So this is like, it's fucked because now actual dumbass humans are then spending money like $400 on a fucking picture, and eBay's not going to do anything about it because they got 10%. They got 10% off that picture. So it's like, man, it was like. I was trying so hard just to fuck over scalpers, but dumbass humans kept getting caught in the trap, man. Dumbass humans. God damn it.
Well, if there's one thing that humans can do well, it's show their stupidity. I mean, it's one thing we do daily. You know.
Well, and that's what made me so frustrated. It's like, man, if you just have no ethics, it's so easy to make money in this country or in this climate. Like, you just have to have no ethics or no morals. You could be like, I could have made $100,000 easily that day, easily, and that's why I'm like, oh, you just don't have to have ethics. Like, maybe I would have gone to jail. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it because there's still people selling pictures.
Well, eBay will back the seller as long as the item matches the description.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I specifically said humans do not buy this.
This is an image.
Humans don't buy this. Please, humans, don't be
You
stupid.
are bidding on an image that I will print from my printer at home.
Oh, my God. That's what I'm just like, man, I am not built for that type of exploitation. Like I had that money in my account and like I could not keep it. It's just not in my DNA, which is where I was like, dude, there are people out there actively doing this shit, trying to keep that money. And I'm like, I can't imagine we're the same species. We can't be the same species. Like the person that keeps that money that's not from a bot. Ah man, I do not want to fuck with that person. If that person exists, I do not want them in my circle. Like, god damn.
Yeah.
That's some like slippery slope ethics right there.
I just think it's fantastic that it worked. So it means that you laid the trap and you snared something twice.
Yeah.
That
Catch and release.
I mean, as far as proof of concept goes, that's enough. That means that
Yeah.
it's a functional trap.
Well, one of the people had the nerve to talk shit to me, and I had to remind him. I'm like, listen here, motherfucker, you just spent $430 on a fucking literal printout. You have no room or capacity to be talking shit right now. I just did you a favor.
Hold on. They were talking shit to you after you
Yeah.
gave them back the money?
I gave him back the money.
How are you gonna talk shit to somebody after you give them back the money? You should be like, man, you know what? Thank you, man. You know what? I was a dumbass. You could have kept my shit because you wrote in the description, humans don't bite. And guess what? I'm a human. You wrote that shit in front of my motherfucking face, and you gave me back my ends. I love you, my guy. Didn't do that. See, I'd have kept. See, that's why I keep motherfuckers' money because dumb motherfuckers.
That's how the one dude, like the one dude responded like that. He was like, "Oh man, thank you so much. Like, I'm just trying to get a 12-year-old a Christmas present. Like, you saved me, blah blah blah." And it's like, yeah, that's how. I'm not doing this for thanks. I was trying to do this to fuck over scalpers. These motherfuckers just got caught in the trap. Like that's again, man. I didn't realize it was that good of a trap. I wasn't trying to catch humans. I was trying to catch dumbass bots.
Yeah. Years ago, my parents' neighbor, they were having problems with a raccoon getting in their trash because they had old trash cans that the lids didn't stay on. And so they put a trap, like a cage trap in their yard. And then at some point, my parents' cat had been outside for too long. And we go looking for him, and lo and behold, he's in the cage. And he'd probably been in there all day. And it turned out that he had been lured by a miniature marshmallow. He was a smart cat. He knew how to communicate. He could say, "Hey, feed me," or "Let me out," or pay attention, that kind of stuff. He was good at that. But he got duped by a marshmallow. Cats don't even eat marshmallows.
Well, apparently raccoons do, because I've been watching the raccoon whisperer.
Oh yeah.
Out of Canada, and he loves giving the raccoons love marshmallows. Apparently.
Oh yeah.
So,
marshmallows and hot dogs.
Yeah. You watch them too? You know what I'm talking about? That's the wholesomeness America needs right now. It's unfortunate that he's Canadian. I bet it only makes sense.
Watching that guy hand out hot dogs to raccoons is one of the
mesmerizing.
Yeah, I know. They're just like really chill about it. Like, hey, give me one of those. Yeah. And then they do their thing. It's like
sometimes when there's no like podcast or anything, I'll just put that on for like half an hour. It's like, yeah, there's just good background. Sammy and Terry and Buddy. He like has names for all of them, and it's like, yeah, no, this shit is the wholesomeness that everybody needs in 2020.
Yeah, but what is he doing with his money for the raccoon population now? Is he working on deforestation?
He's taking donations from around the world for the raccoon population, like straight up. He's the Al Sharpton of the raccoon population.
But is he taking his money? I know he's using his power. Is he using his money too? What is he doing with his skrill?
He's like using other people's money. Like, bro, people send him money around the world to buy this shit. Like, he'll be like,
he's the fucking raccoon emperor. He runs the raccoon empire.
Right.
People send him money to feed the raccoons hot dogs and marshmallows. Like,
and some shout outs. The social capital is what they're giving. They're getting the shout outs. Yeah. And they'll be like, oh, so and so from Sacramento brought sent me $20, and that's what bought these hot dogs this evening. And thank you. It's like, yeah, every single one. It's like, I have not seen one where it wasn't sponsored by a non-Canadian party.
Exactly. He's not using his own money. And so that makes him an evil person.
Well, makes him an imperialist.
Word.
He might not be an authoritarian imperialist, though. He might be some kind of really, nebulously egalitarian imperialist,
And then
but
how are
only to
those hot dogs
raccoons.
made though? No, hold on. How are those hot dogs made though? Is he making those hot dogs himself? Are they all organic? Is he raising
Are they free trade hot
soy?
dogs?
Right? Are they free trade hot dogs?
Well, he's in Canada, so everything he's doing is socialist, right? That's how it
Right,
works.
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
and
No,
uh,
it's
so,
just
and
it's
don't
just
forget,
socialism.
socialism is bad. Socialism is bad. It's horrible.
He's
Horrible.
the socialist ambassador to the Raccoon Empire.
Yeah, those are socialist dogs.
Stalin burgers. Ah.
Oh man, that.
Marshmallows.
Marshmallows. Wow. If people only read Marx though, if they Marx is like revolution, revolution. Tap, tap, is this mic on? Revolution. If they would only just read that man's stuff,
Yeah.
but they won't because they've been told. Ooh, question, an
Yeah.
actual question that I don't know the answer to this. Um, I've been wanting to make a Facebook post about it. Pretty much, if it's not Kitty or you two or some other people, I really don't care. So I got you two. Why don't we like Ayn Rand?
Because her theories were wrong.
I don't know any of them.
Okay, so Ayn Rand created this entire story universe that's essentially a diatribe to disparage people who utilize government services to help themselves to get out of a financial trap and hopefully find themselves a better path to financial stability and a modicum of socialized independence. And she espoused the virtue of the individual and what it means to have resources and all that stuff. And she did this the entire time while she was on the dole. She's a great hypocrite, and also she was wrong about the rugged individualist and the entire narrative itself.
Yeah, she collected Social Security and Medicare. And had an entire generation of
14 and 15-year-olds.
Yeah, obsessed with capital, like free market capitalism, even though she had social security and Medicare herself.
Well, maybe she saw a better way.
But she
You
didn't
know what I'm saying?
update her book. That's the problem. Is like,
Sorry, what'd you say? You broke up for me. I didn't.
but then that's possible. But she didn't update her book.
Oh,
And
okay.
in her dying and that getting disconnected from her original theories, you have a bunch of sophomoric libertarians that then put her on a pedestal because they don't actually want to acknowledge that she got government handouts.
She got government hand jobs. What did you say?
Well, maybe. Oh no, that's how spin works, right? We don't know
Right.
she didn't, so we can't say that maybe she did. Like,
Yeah, a dry, stern government hand job.
yeah.
And
They
that's
coughed on it
like,
first, but it's
how many people are out there, have been out there, prior to the advent of the radio, that were paid by governments to create fiction.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it as Christian, once Christian, now Christian, agnostic, whatever. The Bible. I mean, that thing has been used to brainwash many a people.
But that don't make it inherently bad. It's like the same thing with television.
Oh, no. I'm saying that the people are inherently bad, not the book itself.
Yeah, and I think that's always like the tool. It's like, yeah, guns aren't inherently bad. It's like the people that use them. Like,
well, the bullets,
I mean,
but
shovels have buried more people than guns have.
Right. Yep.
Shovels are useful.
Every time I've used a gun, it was to shoot a target. That gun never did one thing wrong. I'm never going to blame.
You used a gun? Oh my God, you're evil. You're evil because you used a gun. How
Yeah.
dare you use a
The
gun?
gun never.
Do you know how many children are killed with guns, Chris? You are evil,
The gun never did anything wrong when it was in my hands.
right?
The gun
Yeah.
never did anything when it wasn't in anyone's hands.
That's not necessarily true.
It entropy.
Well,
It
because
sits there. But
the shit misfires. There's like definitely times where guns like randomly fire, like especially um like say earthquake happens and somebody has their shit on a shelf, it could easily fucking make a hammer go off. So that's where like
yeah,
guns can fire on their not even necessarily it's not on their own, but there are circumstances to which a gun can fire and there was no human being as the catalyst for that gun firing, which is also why they shouldn't be stored like with the chamber loaded. Yeah. That's one of the issues
Yeah.
is like people store their shit loaded because they're like, oh, I need it ready to go. Well, it's like, yeah, but that's how guns fall off shelves and fucking shoot.
My
Like
my
that's happens.
family heirloom buffalo rifle. It's not cheap to fire, so I don't own any rounds for it. But I would never store that with a loaded. I would never store it loaded.
That's like
Yeah,
how many? What's the? Do you know the caliber off the top of your head?
It's like
Because
a-
those things,
It's
like,
like a 45-60. It kills buffalo.
yeah,
yeah,
it's like 100 caliber.
It,
Back when they were like,
it's
just make
like
the bullet
it's
large.
like enough that if you hit it, apparently if you hit a buffalo like in the around the shoulder, it'll take him down. And like it's one of those human body obliterator rifles. Like
yeah.
there were no survivors. It's in the same family of I think Winchesters that won the West or something like that.
From fear. Man, that's what a lot of people don't get, man, is laws. Laws and fines, putting more money in rich people's pockets than anything else. Man, if you're going to make a law and you're going to have it be a deterrent, um, make sure that it's an actual deterrent, not a fine. Um,
Well,
oh
yeah,
my
fines
goodness. I
only
know.
really
I
harm
mean,
people who can't afford to pay the fines,
Yeah.
and
but
so then
I
it's
don't know if existentially laws have been validated as being deterrents. Like I don't know if that construct has actually been validated in our society, but it's one that a view that's been persistently held.
The punishments are the deterrent.
I mean, but I don't think they actually are, is what I'm
Oh
saying.
yeah. Absolutely not.
The the punishment for murder has not actually stopped the murder rates or implicated that they are an actual deterrent, and that's kind of where
that's because it's not an
work.
authoritarian enough solution. The solutions are almost always they're always geared towards rehabilitation or how can we resolve this. I suggested once, maybe a year or two ago, that we have a giant Cuisinart blender, like a 60-foot glass tube, and you drop someone in at the bottom. There's a blade spinning at hundreds of miles an hour, and you just.
Well, here's the other thing
And
is
I
that you
realized that
could
this is really inhumane and really kind of fucked up.
completely.
The giant blender, the human mystifier or whatever, like that's a really fucked up solution. But I'm pretty sure that if people knew that was a potential punishment, they wouldn't do it.
Do it. Right. And I mean, that's like saying if you kill someone, we're not going to kill you. We're going to kill one of your family members. People would stop murdering.
Well, do you
I
think you'd
mean,
hope they would?
that's what we assume, but
Yeah.
but that's like potentially an incorrect assumption and actually likely wrong in that, like, hey, we're like, yeah, we'll put a rope around your neck and throw you off a fucking galley. Like, well, I guess that's not strong enough.
Right.
Well, pull your pants down and do it. Like, it's like you keep raising the stakes to make it like, again, there's a notion that this punitive theoretical framework can actually be a deterrent, and I'm not sure that our constructs or the data actually validates that.
I wonder how
Well,
many people
and
who had to walk the plank did it willingly because they were so sick and tired of all the other assholes on that pirate ship that they just couldn't wait to get off the damn thing.
wow. Like my thing is the deterrent supposed to product zero, right? So the mask is supposed to not make people not be able to contract the virus. It is supposed to slow down the process so that there are fewer people over a longer amount of time doing it. So is a deterrent supposed to product zero? That another question to ponder.
Right. I mean, but it's supposed to, I would assume a deterrent's supposed to have a net negative, right? And I'm saying I'm not even sure that some of these things are actually resulting
Net
in net
negative.
negatives. Now, I'm not even saying zero. I'm saying they're not even net negative.
Negative. I got you. I got
Like,
you. I'm with you.
because then this is where, like, then we have to look at the notion of, like, okay, what is the potential for people to be a certain type of criminal just by proxy, like by proxy of being human in the first place? So it's like, murderers aren't that high in the first place. So take that one, throw it out. Like robbers or burglars, well, it depends on their socioeconomic situation. So that's where we're looking at it. And then we're saying, what's the actual deterrent from people robbing? Well, it's solving poverty, but that's not how our society is looking at it. We're saying, oh, if we give stiffer penalties, then maybe these poor people will stop acting like they're in dire straits, as if it's a life or death situation if they steal that bread and not like they're doing it because they want to. Um, and it's like there's this element of when people are in life or death situations already and they already have nothing to lose, threatening them with death doesn't actually deter them from doing it
Because I'm gonna die anyway.
philosophically. And again, I think that's where, when we're talking about
Hmm.
people who are in lose lose situations already, a threat of another loss isn't actually a deterrent.
So I'm gonna buy this kilo of cocaine. I'm gonna cook me up some crack, and I'm gonna sit on this corner, and I'm gonna sell this crack, knowing good and well I can get 20 to 50 years
I
because
think
I got a baby to
Oregon's
feed,
trying to
motherfucker. I
legalize
got a baby to
cocaine.
feed.
I think Oregon's legalizing cocaine.
Didn't they already do that? Yeah, didn't they legalize damn near everything?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think you could do that in Oregon.
Well, it wouldn't be illegal. There's no punishment, so or I guess no large punishment like it used to be. So it's to me, it's not a part of this conversation. Oregon or Oregon isn't a part of this conversation. See what I'm saying?
in Oregon.
It's the Oregon, the trail, the Oregon Trail.
The
That's a good game
Oregon.
line. Sorry, my bad. The Oregon. I'm about to ride this Oregon Trail.
Oh Lord.
Cocaine, baby.
To be in that, there's a reason, gestures broadly at the demographic layout or makeup of Oregon, that they're legalizing cocaine and other things, while people in other states that have different demographic makeups still go to jail for those things. And this is where I'm like, John Boehner went from fucking anti-marijuana to stockholder damn near overnight. But it's like he was in a position to be able to do that, whereas a lot of the people who were then affected by these disparate disparate applications of law arbitrarily by state lines, which then is not so arbitrary when you look up the demographic makeup, is
Yep.
the why we still need to actually talk about Oregon, in my opinion.
That
In
was
that,
one of my things, and
yeah,
I'll come right out and say it. I know one black person that lives in Oregon. One. I don't know how many black people live there. I can't say Native
I think she said
Americans
that she
because
lives in a neighborhood with like 8 black people.
but I know the person, like I know the
yeah,
person
we
talking
all
about.
know the one.
That person used to harbor very anti-black views before moving to Oregon, and I think part of becoming less anti-black and more pro-black was being the only black person and isolated in a very white area as to why that transition happened. Because I don't know if you remember, but that person definitely um, was like flirting with like neo-Nazi ideas because
Oh yeah, I hung out with some of those people. I was like, hold on, you're hanging out with them? I love you, baby. I love you, baby. I gotta go.
yeah, but that person was able to pass at certain times, and then to her benefit or detriment, I don't know, um, and explored those ideas in a way that now I think benefited her long term in that, yeah, when she moved out to Oregon, now she realizes like why those ideas are dangerous.
And now, and now also, I'm going to go on record. I'm going to speak for all three of us because this is going out there. This is being recorded. We're not saying it was her fault. There are social institutions and social constructs that bring people of color to hate themselves, to hate
Yep.
their own kind. So
Yep.
nowhere near are any three of us saying that it is all directly her fault the
Oh.
way she thinks. And I'll come out and say it right now. I never dated a dark skinned woman in part, in part because I hated my own dark skin.
Hmm.
Flat out, flat out. Like over the past 10 years, I'm finally getting to see this beauty of darkness that I have.
Hmm.
Man, I'm telling you, one of my big things, one of my big things growing up was, I mean, even by what people call my own kind, getting on me for my dark skin, calling me ugly, calling me dirty, calling me mud baby, and these are my own people. So I didn't even have a people
Right.
because I was darker. And so then when I see, we were on IU's campus, and I still remember her motherfucking face because she was black like my MSI computer black. And I'm telling you, she was just so gorgeous. And I couldn't bring myself to talk to her because she had dark skin. So the woman that we're talking about, I'm not saying that I don't even have the. I'm saying I have those feelings that she had and or has. So I'm
Hmm.
not saying that it's her fault.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 And again, even then, that's where like it wasn't a condemnation. It was more
Right.
of an acknowledgement that yeah, people change too, and part of that is learning um, different perspectives as to then why the thing she held as being relevant when she's 15, 16, not so much when she's 28, 29, 30. So yeah, and gets back to the notion of like, yeah, if everybody had to be responsible for like all of their viewpoints and perspectives as a teenager when they were like adults, that shit would be crazy. But
Right.
um, actions are different for sure. But viewpoints and perspectives, that's a whole, yeah.
Word. Ooh, ooh. Can people please stop using cultural appropriation every time a white person puts on an Asian dress? That pisses me off. It's not cultural appropriation. They are not claiming that they came up with the idea of the Asian dress that they were using. Uh, People need to read more, man. Cultural appropriation isn't the same as cultural exchange or other things, you know? Uh, anyway, that popped into my head.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I think that's a good topic of discussion in that
If you want to wear a silk gown, it's probably because it's comfortable.
well, nothing. Y'all know me and y'all know what I do. So, would y'all say that I appropriate the particular culture that I have a tendency to lean toward and do things about and above? You guys know what I'm talking about?
yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, but that you acknowledge it at least. Like the issue is there's times when it's welcome and there's times when it's not. Like Japan is very welcoming about people appropriating their culture, whereas other Asian countries may not necessarily be that welcoming.
I
Uh,
can't think of I can't think of any culture that is accepting of people appropriating their culture. Like,
I mean, again, that's where I think Japan does seem to have a different perspective as far as I can tell in that it's seen as more of a cultural, contextual the word. It's I based on my like I could be 100% wrong. There does seem to be a more sterile view of cultural artifact exchange and cultural um style exchange, which is why you have a lot of
Yeah.
Japanese hip hop artists, or not artists, but like just all kinds of
Which
Japanese hip hop stuff, which they don't necessarily feel as if they appropriated because when they did it, it was out of cultural reverence. So there's this element of if you're taking something into your culture, it's because you're seeing it as good. So it's not even
yeah, it's not appropriation.
necessarily, it's not negatively associated as appropriation
Yeah.
as far as I can tell, which is why it's not the same. Like it's not, you couldn't even call it appropriation as the same like meaning in that it's like it's more assimilation or um absorption and not
Yeah.
appropriation. Like it's almost like because of their perspective on assimilation or absorption, like you almost can't appropriate Japanese stuff because they have primed their culture to have it incorporated into other cultures.
I
Like
will legit never tell you to stop using chopsticks.
Thank you. I love them shits. I buy my own. Uh, Dude, I got my own pairs. Man, I love my little fingers. You know, I love them things, man. Things is awesome.
No,
I don't get like metal taste in my mouth when I.
every culture at some point develops barbecue. Um, every culture at
yeah.
some point figures out how to cut and style hair or
But
dye
every
hair.
culture doesn't shut its doors for 400 years to prevent Western influence on it. And that's not something that happens everywhere,
Yeah,
but it happens in some places. Like there are things where, like, and give them credit. As soon as they opened up the doors, the British tried to fucking bring
Yeah.
their imperialist shit.
yeah. Well,
So
if the
that's
British
where I'm
hadn't been such assholes, we'd all be walking around wearing silk shirts and
right.
silk
Oh yeah.
pants, and we'd have like, it would be everywhere. We wouldn't be wearing cotton. We wouldn't be as reliant on wool.
Yep.
Silk is an amazing fabric. It breathes,
Strong as fuck.
strong as fuck. If you wear like a silk layer in the winter, it'll keep you warm. But you can wear those same pajamas at night in the middle of summer, and it'll like keep you cool somehow.
Yep. Yep. It's a great insulator.
Fucking wonder properties.
Hmm. But
Yep.
yeah, man.
Fuck all the ways the British Empire fucked us all.
But no, instead it's got to be exotic so they can exploit people and
You know,
act like it's not
you
fucking
know
spun from a worm's ass.
exactly. I've been to a silk factory. They've got these boxes or cages, and they've got little worms. And every so often they go and they
Mhm.
grab one and they hook it up to a machine and just starts coiling it up on a spool. And then they take that thing and they load it into a machine. It's pretty impressive, actually,
Mhm.
They've got worms in cages. Those barbarians.
dude.
Barbarians in
It's
cages.
like it's like a disservice to call them worms because they're huge.
Word.
I mean, they're like
Goats. What's she gonna call it? It's a fucking worm.
I
Well, they
mean,
did genetically modify a goat to produce silk, so
yeah.
that's not actually
Did
incorrect.
they? Did they? Hold on. Hold on. Okay, I'm shutting up. Did they what now?
Yeah,
And it's like super strong silk.
From a goat.
yeah, it's like a hybrid spider goat.
Yep.
Comes
That
out of its
exists.
So
teats.
it's a
Mm,
goat spider worm hybrid.
technically, chimera
That's dope.
Yeah,
at the
and they just
cellular.
Oh man.
and they extract the protein or whatever from its milk.
Yep.
Molecules are dope, man. I love molecules, man. Them motherfuckers.
It's gonna
Wow.
be like next generation organic bulletproof clothing is gonna be thin and light, and it'll be made out of a goat's. It'll come out of a goat's teat.
Well, I feel like that programmable matter on Discovery isn't far out. Like
Oh yeah,
the way that the way that they are portraying it seems to be in line with like the graphene and um like micro nanobot direction.
so
So
so when we finally get the graphene batteries that you can just print at home, and they'll come charged up, and you just insert it, and by the time that finally happens, I hope the technology is worth it.
I mean that's part of it though is like the technology has to be worth it and otherwise like what are we going to use it for is obviously the big question. And
That's
then
what I
it's like
mean. Like, I hope
every
that the
time it's
reason we,
just, how do you make money with it? And it's
yeah,
like,
I know,
well,
like that's what I mean. It seems that the profit motive only motivates people to make more money, but it doesn't actually make
right.
people motivate people to make better products or do better things with the resources. And so at a point we end up with this where we are now, this unsustainable cycle of development and
Yeah.
commerce.
There's an artificial ceiling on development
Yeah.
that capitalism has placed there, in
So
that there's no reason to make programmable matter, like, unless you can find a profit motive. Like that's where, again, it's like I I see that programmable matter being possible and moving towards it, but it's only a combination of moving out of the
wouldn't it be
profit motive
wouldn't it be super
paradigm.
dope to have like a Star Trek uniform that you could just press your communicator button and then it would shed anything that wasn't part of the programmable matter and to just clean itself. And in the process, it would clean your body too.
Right.
Well, like
You your
here,
dead skin cells is power.
Yeah, sure.
like
Why
like
not?
like here's my thing. Take this as you will. We could have that shit by now. We could
Right.
have all this shit by now.
Yeah,
We
but the
could have
British
a
fucked the
car.
Chinese, and that's.
Yep. We
Hmm.
we could have a car that you never have to put gas in. That the first light bulb ever to run well still gets lit once every day. Competitive competition breeds bad skill,
Yep.
just flat out.
It
You know,
does. People haven't
with
accepted it yet.
yep, yep. And this gets into the altruism. This gets into the empathy. If you were to have an altruistic, empathetic competition, you would have collaboration. You would have a collaborative competition. And this is where dollars go out of the door because we don't care about money. We care about advancing everybody.
I mean,
And
technically, that's what the Olympics do, which is also where they have a philosophically sound goal, but then it ends up using slave labor to build the stadium. So it ends up undermining its goal. Because it's like, yeah, the community would benefit from this organization that goes in and rewards people from cooperatively competing with each other to then give out a gold medal that's technically really just um, for show, and it's not an actual prize. In that, like, the gold associated in the medal isn't like it's not like worth thousands and thousands of dollars. But the whole point is that exercise is meant to bring together people cooperatively to compete to benefit society, but then gets back to this manufactured consent for slavery in the process being too present.
word. Oh my
I
goodness. Go ahead. Sorry.
was gonna say, because again, I'm like looking at it where is it possible to bring people together for an altruistic purpose? Is that even existentially
Yes.
possible?
Yes, it is possible. We have to change the systems in place.
Why do we have to change them? Why can't we just get new ones?
Yeah, change them. Like you change a light bulb. You take out one light bulb and you put in another one, or you
Well,
take out a light bulb and you put in a skylight.
why do I? Yeah, well, I think that's why can't we just go outside?
Yeah, change the system. So get it from a different system. So you're not using a light bulb anymore. You're using outside light. Change it. No?
Yeah, we don't have to actually change the physical system to move. You can move into a different system without deconstructing the one. Like,
Let's
Okay,
just
so
leave.
then change from the system.
Let's
Maybe
just
not
yeah,
change the
let's just
system,
like
change from the system.
let's just
How
leave
about
this
that?
building entirely and go build a better building.
Yeah, I still call that change because you're changing.
yeah.
You're
Yeah,
going from one state to a different state.
sure.
So yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. Absolutely. And we can't because of the ego. Is because I've been doing this for so long and I have to be right. And I have to protect my own rightness. So I can't change. And I can't change because I have to know that I'm right. Because being right is what it's all about. It's all It's all give me a second. It's all compromising, and I
Mhm.
don't want to compromise. I don't want to give up anything, which is okay. And if you don't want to give up anything, then go to collaboration. So you don't have to give up anything. You just start to look toward, okay, well, what's the actual goal for everybody? And you can still have change in those systems
For,
because then you can go ahead.
for some reason, every time I think about ego and self-preservation check, I I think of standing up, checking my pockets for my wallet, keys, and phone. That's
Yeah.
that's all that I can think of at this point. That's where that's the survival check. Do I have those three things?
Mhm.
Wallet, keys,
Yeah.
and phone.
And
It only took what, like a couple hundred years for the wallet. It's been around for a couple hundred years. Keys probably the same, but the phone's only been around for what, 2 or 3 decades, two
Yeah,
decades.
mobility, communication, and capital,
Yeah,
and that's basically like what else is fundamentally needed. You don't. Your keys also go to your shelter, so you
yeah.
have
Security.
your security, your abode.
Yeah, you
That's
got
part of those keys.
security, transportation, capital. You got your mobility, you got your stability. Yeah, no, that just kept coming back to me every time. Every time we kind of circled back towards ego and self preservation. I just kept thinking about wallet, keys, phone, uh,
that
jacket, maybe sunglasses if it's bright out.
and that's a part of the change some people have gone through that I think is making them adjust their perception of reality because they don't have to go outside as much anymore.
Hmm.
They don't have to get into their wallet anymore as much now because they're staying inside of their house and their perceptions are changing. They're like, hold on, I don't. People are just now realizing that they've spent 10 hours a week in their car because they have all this free time now. And
And
they
this
used to
is
spend,
this.
go ahead.
I was gonna say this is the philosophical gamut that I was referring to, in that then people are getting more existential about their own
Yeah.
like day to day lives.
Yeah, man. It's like people don't understand that they've been spending so much time in a car just driving back and forth, inundating themselves with marketing from somebody else's capitalistic organization. They turn on the radio, right? And it's interesting to me that people still haven't grasped learning. Like, you learn by being inundated with the same shit over and over again, flat out. I mean, how did you learn whatever first language you speak? Nobody sat down with you from infancy and put you into a classroom and just, this is a noun, this is a verb, this is no, they just spoke it to you and you just sat back and just got inundated with it. And that's how you learned your first language. And it takes time. And when you have 10 extra hours out of the day, I think what's happening is people are starting to realize how much time they've spent learning improper things. And that draws them to, I'll just go back to the cognitive dissonance. I enjoy that term just because it covers so much, you know?
Yeah. There's just so much of it out there.
Yeah. And so then you get a bunch of people shooting themselves and hanging
No,
themselves because they just
the
can't deal
cognitive
with it.
the cognitive dissonance is so heavy that fucking Giuliani farts in the middle of his election fraud testimony, and then they bring out their star. I don't even know what to call it. Train wreck, who looks like she drank the whole bottle of wine in the green room and like munched on her fucking Valium like they were Tic Tacs. She was like verbally accosting the state representative who was asking her the questions. It was so fucked
Right?
up. Like, this is the world we live in.
Ooh, speaking about fucked up, am I a homosexual because I am attracted to a trans man that hasn't changed his features.
So are they like I know they identify, but they are you are attracted to their person and
They, they
by proxy of their person, their personality has then become attractive to you. Um, but I think in that there is like like it depends on if the attraction holds after they transition, technically,
well,
because
what if they never change um, their physical appearance in any way, shape, or form,
that's why this becomes a problematic
and he
framing,
still says that he is a man?
because that's also why that becomes a problematic framing of identity in that yeah you may feel some way but you're not received that way by society so you can't like then people would be like oh I identify as black even though they're
Right,
which then becomes problematic because if you don't have to actually go through the problems or like things that black people go through saying you identify as that becomes problematic because you may feel like that but you don't actually know what that feels like you think you do and this is where it becomes a suit like this to me is also why it becomes problematic for the notion of like trans people to then identify as the um mantle of identity. It becomes super problematic in that say that this person now has that mindset well then at just at the beginning well this is what men do now
yep,
remember
I'm with
and
you.
this is kind of where it's like well now men identify as women well that's actually true some men do identify as women but in a society that then has a definition of what makes a man and at the base
Yep,
like it's a penis and testicles like well this is also why when people get castrated they feel like less of a man so there is this element of at the very core we almost have to identify gender by physical like what is present physically and
and
in that then the person can express that they feel the other way and that they feel that they are the other but until that they actually have the genitals of the other what they're saying they aren't like externally they may be internally but they're not externally so this is like a person a transgender person who is pre-op is just as valid in their feeling of being whatever sex they are but they're not that sex in the physical form yet. So we can't act like they are because then that really it makes gender pointless. Like if somebody can say, "Oh, I have a vagina but I feel like a man, now I'm a man." Well, you feel like a man. That's fine. But until you get that surgery and actually have a penis, like are you? I'm not sure that it's good
and
But what if they
or
what if they
that's
douse themselves with like Axe body spray or Old Spice?
because then that becomes the
and they
the
have a GameCube and a bag full of
here's the
dildos.
problem with that. Then that makes the identity into a costume, which is also why
Preach.
when um like cross dressers in the 80s and 90s were like trying to establish their identities, their concept of what made a woman ends up becoming problematic because it's
Yep,
actually an exaggerated caricature. And
very
this is
true.
why, as a costume, the gender identity of what makes a woman is problematic as to why it's not about clothes, it's not about the bra, it's about the genitals. And this is where, full circle, why genitals ultimately define the gender externally. And the person is 100% valid in how they feel internally. Those things can coexist. And as a society, we are at a point where I think we're nuanced enough to say it's not discriminatory to have that perspective. Like if somebody has a vagina, like, yeah, they can be a male internally, but they have a vagina. So we can't, like, it's not wrong to allude to the fact that their genitals still exist. That's why we have trans people, because they cross genders, like they transcend gender. Like,
So, what about someone like I believe at this point that I am? I'm not going to say no because I don't know everything. I don't care if you call me he, she, him, her, they, whatever. I don't mind any of that. And to me, I associate with all of us. You know, the people that go by pronouns, the people that don't go by pronouns. You know, so if somebody likes me, what's their sexuality? You know what I'm saying?
right. Yeah, and that's where, again, this whole notion of defining gender, it is sort of imperialist. Like, maybe there is no such thing as gender, and these constructs are just. I tend to think that they're bullshit because they really fall apart really quickly.
Real quick.
It's like real quick. Like, and at the end of the day, this is where, um, the two spirit people that we call them, what is it? Not hermaphroditic. There's like a more scientific term for it, because two spirit and hermaphroditic aren't synonymous, but it's the notion that, yeah, there are some people who are even beyond the two
Right.
genders we have in their existence, and they're 100% valid, and our construct's just not good enough to describe them. So it's like the people that exist within this construct have to be willing to learn new constructs in which they may have existed already, but then also they can't limit their perspectives of others based on, our poor books. Like,
Yeah, I don't feel right calling myself a homosexual because I'm attracted to a man that still has his vagina and tits and facial structure and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel right calling myself a homosexual male.
not yet,
I
but
You
if
know?
you're still attracted, then it's 100% valid to say, like, once, if they get rid of their tits and now they have a dick, then you're still attracted to that person, then you're homosexual. Like, and maybe you were all along, or maybe you did not have.
I'm not. Oh, hold on, hold on. I'm not sure that I can't because we both know the same beautiful sun god who is homosexual, and I'm not attracted to him. And
Right.
if I'm not attracted to that man,
But that doesn't mean you're not attracted to some man at the end of the day. And that's kind of where it's like, maybe there is something where, like, you can't, like, existentially, people can't know their attractions until they see it the first time. It's a weird, like, I mean, they can, but
and they
it's
can't.
weird.
Yeah,
There's this weird element of, like, you almost can't know exactly what you're attracted to until you see it. So it's this interplay of chicken and egg where it's like, oh, this person didn't see this before, but now they've seen it, so now they're attracted to it, but they always were. They
Wait,
just hadn't seen it.
doesn't the egg predate the chicken by like millions and hundreds
Yep.
of millions of years?
the egg came first.
Yep.
Yeah, the egg,
The egg came first. The egg came first.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio.